Hello, hello. Thank you very much. Can somebody turn off the front lights? Yeah, we want good visuals. Welcome to everybody. Thank you for coming tonight, and welcome everybody who's watching online on Zoom. We appreciate you all. It's been one of those kind of days here in Korea. One of those things. I got up at 5 a.m., caught the KTX train down to Gyeongju, the ancient capital, and I gave a lecture this morning about the mountain spirits and integration with Korean Buddhism. And then I went out there in Gyeongju and visited two obscure Buddhist temples in a remote mountain that I'd never been to before. Took photos, got back on the KTX, came back to Seoul, had dinner, doing a lecture tonight. There, the modern world is amazing that you can do that. With our transportation system, it is incredible. And the thing, that you can arrange to do a day like that with confidence. I mean, I knew I could do it just perfectly fine, get to Gyeongju, get back, be on time for everything. Just had the KTX tickets, and you can just do it and not even worry. It's amazing. Yes, now here we are. We're talking about our topic here. It's forward, it's back. Yes. New manifestations of Dangun artworks. We're going to talk about the myth and the artworks of it and what is new and changing here in just one particular place devoted to this in this nation. We scheduled this lecture tonight because the holiday is coming up. In just one more week, October 3rd is National Foundation Day. It's the day of Dangun. It's called Gaechunjul, and to be in advance of that holiday and perhaps inspire people to go see some of the events that happen for Gaechunjul, which are not well known, not publicized, a little hard to find. Ask during the question time if you're interested, and I'll tell you what I know will be happening. Okay, this is me. I'm going to go through these slides pretty quickly. If there's anything really interesting to you that you want to ask a question about later, take a screenshot with your phone so you can remember what it is you want to ask about. I've been a member here of the RAS since 1988, 40th anniversary coming up sometime. Yeah, happy member. All right, now Korea's mythical founding king, the first king of the first Korean kingdom, and it is mythical no matter what North Korea and certain fanatics in this country will tell you. Dangun Wangum has been freshly revered for more than a century now. Really just got going in the early 1900s as a revived thing, and for a century, but it's been pretty important. And there's a public holiday, one of Korea's great national holidays, National Foundation Day, or Gaechunjul, the opening of heaven, coming up soon. And many artworks have been made of him, but until recently were of only two standard motifs, which I will show. Yeah. And I've recently spent several days exploring many shrines for him at remote Taebaek-san, the Grand White Mountain National Park, which is devoted especially to this Dangun figure within South Korea, the most important place in the nation for him, for the whole myth and idea and such. And some were decades old, but others quite new, and discovered many fresh artworks, amazing in their innovation, lavishness, and prominent presentation. It's evolving, it's changing, it's quite different than it was 10 years ago, and really, really different from 35 years ago when I first visited this mountain. In this lecture, I will show many examples, explain interpretations of them, also delve into the socio-cultural significance of this trend and the importance of Dangun's image and story to the inevitable future reunification of the Korean nation. We'll just touch upon that. Last we could actually make an entire 1-hour lecture about that, but maybe in the future. All right, now here we're talking about this myth. Korea's ethnic ancestral Sanshin. Sanshin is a mountain spirit. Now, he's the founder of, Dangun is the founder of the Korean ethnic group. And if you take Koreans as an ethnic group, you realize, maybe you don't know this, didn't think about it, Korea is the 11th biggest ethnic group in the world. Number 11, the way that the United Nations officially defines ethnic groups. Number 10 is the Germans. At 82 million, there's about 80 million Koreans, just behind the Germans in this way. I mean, worldwide, Mexico to Uzbekistan, and especially here in the Korean Peninsula, of course, 74 million of them right here. And as an ethnic group, and Dangun is the originator of this ethnic group, which is then one of the world's most important. There's thousands and thousands of ethnic groups you can identify, and Koreans are the 11th biggest. All right. This has become the main story of Korean national origin. It wasn't always, but it has become pretty much universally accepted and basis of the opening heaven day, which is coming on October 3rd. Officially, October 3rd, that's what the government said it, upon the foundation of the Republic of Korea, 1948. The government deciding to use solar calendar, putting it October 3rd, but it's originally the third day of the 10th moon, which would then happen always in late October or early November. And many of the really fundamentalist, passionate groups that worship this event and worship Dangun as an ethnic founder god, they have switched to now they insist on doing it by the lunar calendar. And this is weird. It might fall on like a Wednesday in an ordinary working week at the beginning of November, and hardly anybody's going to show up. So I don't know why they do that. Exactly for that reason. I mean, at least on October 3rd, it's a national holiday. You can get the public to come to your event, but they do. Many of them do, and some of the shrines are now pretty empty on October 3rd. There's no formal ceremony at some of the big shrines. So that's changing. That just changed within the last 5 or 6 years. That changed. So you gotta keep up. Korean culture is far from stagnant. The myth tells the founding of legendary Gojo-san. Let's call it legendary, not entirely mythical, but there's no real evidence there ever was any such thing as an ancient Joseon kingdom, although there is now in the National Museum, they have a Gojo-san room. You can see relics that they say are from Gojo-san, but not a single one of them has Joseon written in Chinese character on the bronze implements or anything, and there's no evidence that it's just anything but just regular Bronze Age relics of tribes from Manchuria and such, but they have this in the National Museum, and that's part of the politics of all this, of claiming that it's real, that it's historical, and so I'm going to give it legendary, right? In between mythical and historical. There is some ancient Chinese document that didn't mention a Joseon kingdom, but maybe the writer just heard some story about it, or maybe he actually met somebody from there who had that title of a group. Certainly it wasn't a kingdom. It wasn't a kingdom. They didn't have any kings. It was tribal groups, and they would have had a tribal chief of like a tribal federation at best. Anyway, there's a very first story in the Samguk-yusa. If you don't know the Samguk-yusa, you should. It's the Old Testament of Korea, meaning the great stories, the classic, great, wonderful stories like you find in the Old Testament and then used by Shakespeare all the way to Bob Dylan as sources, of just great stories to write poems about and such. It's the great stories of Korea. In the tourism business, I've been in the cultural tourism business my whole career. This is a Bible for us. This is the great stories you use for tour guiding and explaining Korea and making Korea seem interesting and fun. It's all the great stories. It was written in the Monk Irian in the late 1200s. And it's a nationalistic work. He wrote it to try to give Korea an identity. By the late 1200s, the Mongols had conquered Korea. Genghis Khan, the Mongols, and it was terrible. Korea was very suffering, and the Mongols were just making Korea one colony of their gigantic Mongol empire. And Master Irian, who was an enlightened Zen monk, wanted to really try to be sure that he wanted to manifest that Korea has an identity. Korea is a different ethnic group, an independent group of people, even though Korea came from many, many different tribal groups joining together, and then 3 big kingdoms or 4 who eventually united into one on this peninsula and such. But he wanted to contradict that and say that Koreans had one origin. There was one origin of the Korean group. And so he put this myth of Dangun and Gojo-san as the very first chapter, the first thing in this book. And this, by the way, is the cover of what I think is the best translation so far. Someday, Brother Anthony is going to give us a better translation of this book. Something we need it. But this is the best translation so far, 2006 by Kim Dal-young. That's the one I depend upon. All right. Now, the myth goes like this. Huanin, he's the king of heaven, emperor of heaven, kind of identified with the Taoist, the jade emperor of heaven figure of Taoism. They also call him Jaesuk, which is a Buddhist heavenly king sort of a thing. Irian put that in there. He's up there in heaven, and one of his younger sons, named Huanun, asked him to send him down to earth to govern his own land. It's important. He's a younger son. The problem in every royal family, if the king has many sons, well, the first king is the crown prince. And the second king would be head of the military. Second son, he'd make him head of the military. And the third son, he'd make him head of the religion, the national religion, whatever. And then the fourth son, what does he do? And the fifth son, sixth son, what do they do for the rest of their life? The Prince Harry problem, right? And it causes trouble. He wanted to leave heaven then. He's a younger son. He had nothing to do, but he's a leader. He feels, I am a leader. I can do something. So he asked his father, can I leave and start my own kingdom? And father says, yeah, you can go to earth. And father surveyed the mountains of the earth and chose Taebaek-san, the grand white mountain. Koreans have always worshipped the color white. It's the first thing the Chinese ever mentioned about Korea. In the scholar who went along with the army in 108 BC invading this area long before there was anything you could call Korea, but these northeastern barbarians, he noticed they wore white clothing and they used white in their religious ceremonies, white cloth and such. He thought that was very strange to wear white clothing in 108 BC, because think of the laundry problems. I mean, it's just terribly impractical. But he was surprised by this. The other thing he said is that they love to sing. These people really love to sing. They're sitting around singing everybody sings, but these people are just singing all the time. And that leads us to K-pop today. There we are. Now, he chose Taebaek, the grand white mountain. You see the name, the meaning of that then. If white is the holy color, the sacred color, the religious color, the grand white mountain. It's just a religious name. Nobody knows where this is. Even Irian, writing in the 1200s, he said, we don't know what mountain they're talking about. He suggested it's probably Myeongsan in North Korea, but he mentioned a few other mountains it could possibly have been. He did not mention Baekdu-san, but these days, pretty much any Korean you ask, the original Taebaek-san was Baekdu-san, and that's what North Koreans believe, and as official doctrine, and every 99% probably of South Koreans would tell you that this mythical Taebaek-san is Baekdu-san on the border of North Korea and China, a giant volcano. which name means Whitehead Mountain, Whitehead, because it's always snow-capped, even in August. It is snow up on the peak. So now, Taebaek-san is the name of a mountain in South Korea also. Just happens to have that name, and I don't really know when it got that name. If we had Suk Ji-hoon here, he'd certainly tell us. But I don't know when it got that name, but a long, long time ago got that name. So that mountain, just because that's in South Korea, has become identified with this myth, although nobody seriously thinks that Dangun appeared at the South Korea Taebaek-san. Nobody thinks so, but it does have that name, so it's used for this religious purpose because we can't go to North Korea for the real Taebaek-san. It could have, the actual mythical Taebaek-san might have been someplace in Manchuria, even. Nobody knows. Right, the best site. So from heaven, surveying, choosing this mountain, the best place. He sent down his son, opened heaven. That's what Gechon, from Gechonjol, opening of heaven, sent down his son to benefit humanity. Hongik Ingan, which becomes a very famous phrase in Korean culture. Hongik Ingan, to benefit humanity. It's why the son of the Lord of heaven came to earth, to benefit humanity, to bring benefit to the people. What does this mean? These were Bronze Age people. These were Bronze Age invaders, horse riders coming in from Siberia. There were Stone Age people here already, more like Filipinos or something, Pacific Island kind of people, not the Koreans we know today. There were Stone Age people here. They disappeared. They're all gone. Nothing left. They were displaced, we say politely. But you can imagine Bronze Age people would consider Stone Age people to be like animals, half human, half animal, lower level. And so to benefit humanity, bringing them Bronze Age culture, the same way much later, Iron Age and Steel Age people encountering primitive people, they want to benefit them by bringing them our culture, electricity and cotton clothing and all the wonderful stuff that we enjoy, bringing it to these tribes in Africa and Brazil. Doesn't always work out very well when we do this, but to benefit humanity, which actually then becomes, in Korean political science colleges and such, studying political science, they kind of begin with this. It's in the textbooks as like the original Korean political philosophy, the purpose of government. Why do we have a government? Why do we have a king? We used to have a king. Why do we have a government at all? To benefit the people. And if the government benefits the people, then it's a good government, a legitimate government. If it harms the people, does not benefit them, or even harms them, it's illegitimate and should be overthrown. The original Korean political philosophy, right there. Hongik Ingan. Now, just by great irony, then because of this Hongik Ingan slogan, there came to be Hongik University of the Catholics, Catholic University here in Seoul, one of the great universities of Korea called Hongik University. And then the entrance area in front of Hongik University, Hongdae Ipgu, named after this, becomes the youth center of Korea, and the hip hop and the underground nightclubs and punk rock and now K-pop center of Korea is named after this and after this myth. Ask any of the teenagers down there in Hongdae walking around the streets these days from 100 different nations, and nobody has any idea, including the Koreans, any idea where that name comes from, why it's called Hongdae. Anyway, this is a photo from America. It's a real thing that happens sometimes in atmospheric science. A phenomena like this, swirling clouds, and a hole develops and sweeping. You can imagine the opening of heaven and a spirit descending from heaven. This does really happen in the weather. This is an actual real photo from the United States, actually, but it happens anywhere in the world. Well, sometimes, and you can imagine the opening of heaven and spirit coming down. Okay, this is Jaesuk, when it said that the emperor of heaven, the king of heaven, is also Jaesuk. That's Jaesuk Buddha surrounded by stars and planets, the sun and the moon. This is a Chilsung painting. The Jade Emperor of Heaven is down here, but Jesuk Buddha is kind of a manager of heaven, let's say, the manager, the administrator of heavenly things, and he's identified, Irian identifies him as similar to this Huanin figure, king of heaven, right? Now, Huanong, his son, his younger son, descends with the 3 heavenly seals or treasures. His father gives him 3 things, either some kind of seal of authority, like a stamp, or treasures. You could, there's 3 treasures, like the 3 treasures of the Emperor of Japan, with a bronze mirror, a sword, and a big jade, a big piece of jade that signified they very similar, and probably some treasures like that to show his authority to be a king. And 3,000 followers in 4,000 years ago, that's a big army. Probably bigger than any actual army of any tribal group in this entire region. That's a lot. 3,000 followers. He had an army with him from heaven, so not just coming alone. Okay, now he descends to a sacred sandalwood tree. There's actually no sandalwoods in the upper reaches of Korean mountains. This is a Buddhist addition. Sandalwood is where they make incense from in India. And later, Korea got it much later, and so it wasn't really a sandalwood tree, but the Buddhist monk writing this did insert that to make an incense tree as a sacred tree on the peak of Taebaek-san, on the summit, on the peak. He descends to the peak and he establishes a Shinsi, sacred city or spirit city, a spiritual city around the summit of the mountain. Imagine this very high mountain. He marshaled the noble spirits of wind, rain, and clouds as his ministers. Of course, around the peak of a mountain, rain, wind, clouds makes perfect sense. They has become his government ministers. Okay, he's a lord of nature. And a government was established with 360 departments to rule with laws and moral codes about many separate topics. Okay, this also makes sense as a Bronze Age government, something they're trying to rule a large tribal area and something. 360 departments. This means 360 different topics or subjects. There's 365 days in a year. So one topic for each day. Today we discuss fishing. Tomorrow we discuss deer hunting. Next day we discuss childcare. Next day we talk about criminal penalties. Next day we talk about fire building or wall building. 360 things that government should pay attention to, and one on each day for organization. That kind of makes sense. And 5 days for holiday. 5 days like end of the year holiday. Koreans used to have 5-day festivals, indeed, like Danoje and such, 5 days long. So this makes actual sense as kind of a structure of a Bronze Age government. Yeah, all right. Now, a bear and a tiger both came to Holy Huanung and prayed or begged to become human beings. This has always been very strange to me. It's weird. Why the hell would a tiger want to be a human being? Isn't it much better to be a tiger? I mean, in the old days, before humans had guns, I mean, we have to go to school. We have to get jobs. We got to get married. Tigers just run around doing whatever they want to do and eating and enjoying the mountains. Much better. Why do they want to be human? That hardly makes sense, but all right. Imagine this as though, please imagine this, as Stone Age people, encountering the Bronze Age people would make the Stone Age people as their slaves. Just automatically, they'd regard them as animals, make them their slaves and try to teach them a little Bronze Age culture as much as they could. But suppose the bear people and the tiger people, the ones who hunted bears in the mountains, were called the bear people of the Stone Age. And the ones who hunted tigers, strongest of all, such called the tiger people. The one who caught ducks in nets would be the duck people. The fishing would all the time, they'd be the fish people. Those who gathered mushrooms would be the mushroom people, and they would all trade their goods with each other. Imagine like that, Stone Age tribes, kind of makes sense. And they want to become human beings. That means they want to join the Bronze Age. We want to be part of you. We don't want to be your slaves. We are bear killers. We are tiger hunters. We're tough. We're strong. We'll be your soldiers. We'll be soldiers for you. Let us join your military and we will become human beings. We'll join the Bronze Age. Don't treat us like Stone Age animals. All right, that kind of makes sense in a way. And then the heavenly prince decided to give them a chance and gave them a bundle of mugwort and 20 bulbs of garlic, and told them if they ate only these sacred foods and stayed in a cave, or at least out of the sunlight, stayed in the darkness for 100 days, they would become human. Okay, you're looking at the first kimchi. Now, Koreans didn't have any cabbage back then. They didn't have any radish either. Up in Siberia, the winter is 6 months long in Siberia. Mugwort and garlic are both medicinal. They're medicinal. They help you get healthier. They probably would help people survive the Siberian winter against viruses and such. And pickles, they developed pickling up in Siberia because 6 months of winter and you have dried fish, dried meat. So you had to have pickled vegetables to go along with that. And these would be regarded as, these would taste terrible. Raw mugwort and raw garlic pickled tastes bad, but it's medicinal. It's good for you. So he would assign, this is our sacred food, our holy food, this special pickle, the first kimchi on record, right? And give it to them and say, you eat this for 100 days. Okay, what is 100 days? That is exactly the length of a Korean winter, at least before global warming, whatever, just about the 1st of December until about the middle of March. 100 days, that's a Korean winter. This kind of makes sense. Stay in a cave, stay in the darkness. Bears do that anyway. Bears hibernate. And maybe the bear people, in imitating their prey, would also hibernate in winter. I don't know. This is a children's cartoon of this. The bear crying, eating the mugwort and garlic, and the tiger vomiting as some angel girl brings in more into the cave. And this is a drink they were actually selling before, little brown bottles, you know, those medicinal drinks. I haven't seen it in a long time, but they used to sell this in the pharmacies and such as like a hangover cure. It had mugwort and garlic in it, and caffeine, of course, lots of caffeine, and some B vitamins. It's like a hangover cure. It's like after you've been drinking too much soju all night, in the morning, have some of this, you can become a human being. This will make you a human being. You can revive, become a human again. This was funny. They used to sell this. Pretty cool. Now, the tiger gave up in impatient hunger. Tigers do not hibernate in the winter up there. They go out and hunt for deer and rabbits in the snow. So they can do it. The bear, accustomed to hibernation and such, and the bear could do it. He left the cave. The bear remained. And then after 21 more days, transformed into a young woman. This is the bear with mugwort and garlic who becomes the first Korean woman, or at least the first Korean queen, shall we say. And this is why, you know, how everybody's afraid of the short, burly women in the subway with permed, curly hair who push you out of the way to get a subway seat. And in the market, they're so aggressive, the ajamas. All their husbands are scared of them. Everybody is. They rule this nation. Ajamas come from bears. The first ajama was a bear. It makes perfect sense. There it is. This myth goes right along. And this is a postage stamp set. The Korean government a while ago, 30 years ago, made a whole postage stamp set of this myth. And here is Hwanung giving mugwort and garlic with his ministers over here, bear and tiger. And here the bear is eating, the tiger leaves the cave, the bear becomes a beautiful K-pop star girl, etc. Now, what's this about? Okay, the bear people win the contest. What is this contest of eating the kimchi in the cave? They win the contest. That would mean the chief of the bear people, his chief, he would have a daughter, right? In these days, 12, 13-year-old girl, some pretty daughter, and he gives her to the Bronze Age chief to be his wife. That's how they made alliances in these days. That's what it means a bear became a young woman. The chief of the bear people, his daughter was given to the Bronze Age people, and their leader, he took her as one of his wives, and so she becomes a human being, and by transfer, then her relatives of the bear tribe, they become human beings. They become accepted and such. This does make some sense, not just as a myth. Now, the bear woman, Unya, the first Ajumma, was grateful and made offerings to Huanong at the stone altar by the secret tree on the peak of the mountain. She climbed up to the peak and at the stone altar. Remember, Huanong is a spirit. He's a spiritual, not a real physical like person. He's a spiritual person. Now, she had no husband, however. You can imagine who wants to marry a girl who used to be a bear, who has transitioned, shall we say, from bearhood into a young woman who's going to marry her. Frightening enough. Normal women, frightening enough, but a bear woman, no husband, nobody wanted to marry her. She prayed for a son at the altar. In the old days in Eastern Asia, every woman wanted a son, a baby boy. So she prayed to have a son. Huanong was moved by her prayers to transform himself into a human man. He suddenly appears in human form. Hello, here I am, baby. You want a son? We can arrange that. And he mated with her. That's what the translation really says. That the original Chinese character said. The Koreans always translated. They got married and lived happily ever after. There was no marriage back then, not the way we think of it now. There was no such thing, whatever, and such. No, they did not get married. The Chinese character said they did it. Okay. Then presumably Huanong goes back to being a spirit. All right. 9 months later, as usual, she gave birth to a son, and he was named Dangun Wangum. All right. Wangum is just a title of king, an ancient kind of tribal leader becoming king. The Shilla kingdom, they used Marakpan for their tribal leaders all the way to 500 or so before they started saying king. Other Korean groups and kingdoms had different names, but here, Dangun, and Dangun means sandalwood king, sandalwood leader, primary. But originally, probably this meant shrine, Dan, shrine, altar, an altar, a stone altar. Because remember, she made altar at the stone altar, and Dangun is the king who came from the altar. This is where they mated, and she got pregnant, and he comes from that. It was originally Dangun, meaning altar king, king from the altar, but the Buddhists changed it to sandalwood, like the sandalwood tree, like incense, to give a more Buddhist meaning, simply. Okay, so that's what he becomes known as. So he's the first king of the first Korean kingdom. He is the grandson of the king of heaven, emperor of heaven. Yes, his mother was a bear. Now, this is a painting of this by modern artist Lee Soo-cha in 1999. After she visited North Korea, she had an exhibition down in Insadong, and I attended the exhibit and took this photo. And you got the sun and moon up here right now. This is Baekdu-san, the cauldron of Baekdu-san, obviously that great volcano where Koreans now believe it happened. Here's the sacred red pine tree of Korea, the king of all plants to Korean people. It's even on the money, on the 10,000 won bill, red pine tree, and then the birch tree from Siberia. So you got to see the sacred tree of Siberia where Koreans came from, and the red pine tree of Korean peninsula, where they end up. The tiger is walking away in disappointment, and here we have beautiful bear girl and Huanong. Why the artist made her skin so light color, so whitish, and he is distinctly darker skin, although he's the son of the Lord of Heaven. I don't know. Never had a chance to ask her that. But there you are, a depiction of the myth in modern terms. Let me see. Now, Dangun founded the first Korean kingdom with its capital nearby what is now Pyongyang. You think North Koreans find that significant? Oh, yes, yes, they do. Oh, that is just really good politics. Irian identified the location as there, and North Koreans really love this part of the myth. They then moved to Asadal, which nobody knows where Asadal was, but probably on Mount Gulsan in Hwanghae province, just down the river, down the Taedong River from Pyongyang city. About halfway down there is Gulsan, a prominent 900-meter mountain, pretty flat land around it, so it looks really big and tall because of being very distinct at 900 meters there. Gulsan, 9 Moons Mountain, and he named it Joseon. Joseon, probably not the same Joseon as the Joseon dynasty, but that is why Joseon dynasty took that name, because this pronunciation, at least in Korean characters, of this ancient Joseon. Okay, in the 50th year of the reign of the Emperor Yao, China's mythical sage emperor who started China. He's not the guy who started Chinese civilization. That's Fu Xi. See him in a few minutes and such. But Emperor Yao is the first real emperor starting a real Chinese government. And Irian put this, in the 50th year of Emperor Yao. That's about one human life in those days, one human lifetime. It's very deliberate. You say, Koreans are not claiming to be the first kingdom in Northeast Asia. They couldn't do that. You can't claim to be older than the Chinese. That's ridiculous. And some Koreans do these days. They say they started a kingdom before the Chinese ever did, but that's just ridiculous. But Irian was putting this 50 years later. He was saying Korea's number 2. He was positioning Korea as number 2, the second kingdom ever developed in Northeast Asia, putting it number 2. Certainly ahead of the Japanese, who also claimed to be older than China, blah, 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 and other groups and such around there, the Mongols or whoever and such. He was deliberately putting it as number 2. You know, we are the second kingdom and therefore worthy of respect. Dangun reigned over Joseon for 1,500 years, supposedly. Now, Koreans these days, Koreans are into this myth. This is Gulsan in North Korea. That's what it looks like. I have never been there yet. Very few foreigners ever have. Someday. Koreans these days, in talking about this 1,500 years he was king. Well, he was the grandson of the Lord of Heaven. He's half divine. He could live immortally, whatever. But they interpret this now. They say Dangun was actually a title of the king, and there was a dynasty. They say there were 33. 33 is a sacred number. 3 is always holy sacred number for Koreans, so 33. 33 men signed the Declaration of Independence of Korea, and there's 33 great temples devoted to Gwanam Bosal, Bodhisattva, etc., etc. 33 holy number. They say there are 33 Dangun kings, a whole dynasty of them for 1,500 years. That's how they explain this longevity of such a thing. And this is Gulsan, okay? And this is the Samsungsa, still currently in North Korea. North Koreans have rebuilt this. It's a very old shrine, at least from the Joseon dynasty. We're not sure because we can't do real research. Could be from Goryeo times, even medieval. We don't really know, but they have rebuilt it a few times. North Korean, this is, of course, destroyed in American bombing in the Korean War, but North Koreans did rebuild it now. And in there is these 3 paintings, which may be some of the oldest paintings we have on the entire Korean peninsula. Of these 3, Hwanin, Lord of Heaven, his son, Hwanung, who came to earth, and Dangun, his son. Of the 3 of them, maybe the oldest 3 paintings we have. I'm not sure. And again, we need Ji-hoon to tell us the truth. At the end of his reign, in 1122 BC, This is the foundation. King Wu of the Zhou dynasty founded the Zhou dynasty. Today, we think that date is, I think, 984, or some scholars say 956. It has moved much forward. But in the old days, everybody thought the Zhou dynasty of China was founded in 1122. So Idian wrote this in, that date, as a real date. You know, this is the first time in this myth we get like real history, real date. Idian wrote this in. Founding King of Wu of the Zhou dynasty in Ziji, as Kija, as the Koreans call him, Kija, to Korea and fiefed him. He was an official of the Shang kingdom who had helped the Zhou overthrow the Shang and take power. And he couldn't keep this guy in there because he's from the previous kingdom, but he wanted to reward him. So he gave him soldiers and money and said, go northeast. Go up there northeast, start your own kingdom. So he came up and he apparently overthrew the ancient Joseon kingdom, if there was any such thing, or anyway, he came in and took over. This is actually kind of historical. We think there really was a Kija, although there's a lot of controversy over which century he really did come here and act. It could have been as late as like 300 BC, so according to some scholars. But okay, so Dangun moved his capital again, then returned to Asadal, and he abdicated his throne. He gave up. He said, okay, I'm not king anymore. The Chinese were coming in with Iron Age civilization. So they were doing to the Koreans exactly what the Koreans did to the Stone Age people. I mean, they're bringing a much superior force and civilization. Koreans could not resist militarily or culturally. The Chinese started taking over with their thing. And such. So Dangun abdicates his throne, hiding himself in the mountains, becoming an immortal Sanjin, mountain spirit, at the age of 1908. When he was that old, 1908, a real Methuselah, he became Sanjin. Now I love this ending of this because it ties Dangun into mountain spirits, the main thing that I've studied for 40 years here and such. And Dangun became a mountain spirit at Gulsan. He is the spirit of Gulsan. He remains immortal as a mountain spirit. And this is very evocative as Chinese culture takes over and displaces the original Korean culture in the valleys, in the towns, down by the rivers, in the towns. Chinese culture started taking over. But Dangun represents real, true, original Korean culture, the Siberian shamanism. He's hiding in the mountains. And this is still true today. After Korea's had this long domination by China, and then Japanese colonialism, and then the American influence all in the valleys, in the cities, in the lowlands, all this modernization. But still today, Korean culture is hiding up in the mountains. Go hiking and go find it. The shamanism is up there, and the Sanjin shrines, the original Korean culture, Dragon King shrines, and to shamanism, and the great Buddhist temples and such high in the mountain. That's where the real Korean culture is still hiding. Although these days, for tourism, some of it's pretty public, but a lot of it is still pretty hidden. Right? So this is very evocative to Korea's entire development. Foreign influence comes in the lowlands, and Korea keeps developing and modernizing. But Sanjin, the mountain spirit, he's still up there in the mountains, representing the origin of Korea, representing Dangun. Right. Okay. Notice now, let's turn to this concept of Chunjin, heaven, earth, and humanity. It's the original philosophy of East Asia, developed by the Chinese 3,000 years ago, along with the Palgui, the 8 trigrams of the I Ching, the concept of yin and yang, hot, cold, up, down, male, female, the binary, but then a trinity also, heaven, earth, and humanity. And you combine the yin yang and this, combine them together, you can make any number combination you want and develop all human philosophy and manifestations. Here, this is a typical thing we see all over Korea: a square pond, a round island, and a standing something on it. This is a manifestation of this Chunji-in philosophy. Square pond represents earth, square, like a farm field. Round island, round heaven. Heaven is round, the dome around us, the horizon round, and standing, that's us, humanity. We stand up straight. So anything standing could be one single pine tree, could be a stone pagoda, could be a tea house, anything standing on the island. You see this is at a great Buddhist temple. This is at a great palace. You see this at Confucian shrines and temples and such all over the peninsula. You'll find architecture like this. It represents this Chun-Ji-In, heaven, earth, and humanity, Trinity. Such. So these three guys do also in the original Korean religion thinking and such. Hwanin, the Lord of Heaven, represents heaven. Hwanung came to earth. And notice he's wearing animal skins. He's like a real primitive Bronze Age guy and such. He represents earth and then representing humanity, making a human kingdom. And he doesn't have animal skins anymore. He has leaves on his shoulders, as we'll see. And this kind of emblem, you'll see this all around Korea too. In this case, the blue circle represents heaven. The yellow, in this case, square, represents earth. And then the red triangle is humanity. This is on a gong, but you'll find this all over in the deep mountain countryside of Korea where people are practicing traditions. You'll find that all the time. This is a set of those three by a master woodcarver who has his studio in Yeoju, in fact, and some masterpiece carvings here of Hwanin, Lord of Heaven, with notice the circle of heaven, and Hwanung, his son, with the animal skins, and he's got the square of earth as his halo, and Dangun, his son, first king, with the triangle of humanity as his halo, the wood carvings. Okay, now you see this all the time, this heaven, earth, humanity. This is even in the subway stations like this as a symbol of change, changing the lines on a map. This is indicating a subway changing place. But this became the national flag of Korea. This is the original way the flag was, and then they just simplified it. They made it red and blue only. And this is in a Catholic church right here in Seoul, representing Father, Son, and Holy Ghost of the Catholics, but they're using the Korean symbol to symbolize that in a stained glass window. It's everywhere. As you look, the three-part supreme ultimate symbol, the Samtaeguk, we call this, all right? Korea's traditional ideology and cultural identity. It's so important, they made it their national flag. Even though these symbols come from China, but it's the Korean national flag. They are Chinese symbols. Nobody could doubt, but Korean flag. Such they were showing their loyalty to that philosophy back in the 1880s when they first developed this flag. They weren't saying loyalty to the Chinese government per se, not that, but to Chinese civilization, to Chinese philosophy. They were loyal. They were rejecting the Westerners and their terrible new ideas back then. All right, and we get Samsung-gak. Now today I could do an entire hour lecture on this, and maybe I will someday. The Three Saints Shrine in every major Buddhist temple has one of these, and inside it has the Chilsung representing the powers of heaven, the stars and the planets, and it has the mountain spirit. Mountain spirit, Sanchin, in this case female, representing the powers of earth. And Deoksung, the lonely saint, a fully enlightened Buddhist disciple, as enlightened as any human could ever be. So the best of heaven, the stars and planets, the best of earth, the great mountains, the best of humanity. They're together in one shrine. And it's no coincidence. It represents that Chun-Ji-In philosophy. Right. And in a Samsung-gak, always you have Sanchin, the mountain spirit, and his companions are usually, like I just showed, Deoksung and Chilsung, but also sometimes Yongwang and sometimes Dangun. So this is where bringing it around full circle comes in. Dangun is sometimes in these shrines as a third or a fourth person. Now here's some of the oldest antique paintings we have of Dangun. Doing this. Got to keep the time here. Whoa, keep bumping that. Didn't want to. Okay, so the earliest painting, some of the oldest we have. This is a 1926 one that was commissioned to copy a 1910 one. Which is one of the really oldest modern ones. This one may really be 19th century. I've had this whole discussion with Ji-hoon about this, and not quite so sure, but certainly 19th century. Shows Dangun with leaves, again, as a man of nature. Okay, willow leaves on his shoulders and palawina leaves, another sacred tree, the palawina tree, palawina leaves around his waist. This is maybe the oldest depictions we have of him being like this. Okay, short on time. All right, that kind of motif in this is right here, a giant statue in Seoul up at Dobong-san, and this kind of painting. Okay, and here is up at Taebaek-san itself, near the peak of Taebaek-san, at Korea's very highest temple, in their Sanshin shrine, the Sanshin, and right next to him, Dangun in that motif. And here's a really modernized version of that motif in a temple at Gyeongsan, really getting flamboyant about it. Okay, this comes from Fuxi, the origin of Chinese civilization, not the parallel of Emperor Yao, the first emperor of China, who'd really be the parallel to Dangun, but Fuxi, who actually started civilization and philosophy. Supposedly, Fuxi made this first yin-yang thing and the 8 trigrams. These are depictions of him, and he has this leaf mantle on his shoulders and his waist. Yeah, I think clearly the Koreans copied from Fuxi motifs. Those are very old in China. Now here even have Sanshin, mountain sphere paintings with a mantle of leaves on his shoulders. You often find that. The other main motif traditionally is this of a kind of brown orange sort of robe. They didn't make it red like a king or yellow like a Chinese emperor, but kind of in between red and yellow is this curious brown sort of color, and did this, and with the straight black beard, even though he's 1900 years old, but hey, he's grandson of the Lord of Heaven, he maintains his youth. It's like an old Harabaji on the train with the hair dye. All right, this is right here in Seoul. The main shrine in Seoul has him in that brown robe with a white scarf over here and the black hair, both in painting and statue. Right here, and this is at that shrine here in Seoul. This is the ceremony that they used to do on October 3rd, and now they're doing it by the lunar calendar. They have the ceremony here. This is something you can go see, and if it's convenient this year, maybe I'll hold a tour to go see this. I used to do this tour every October 3rd, but I did it just last year. I brought a group of people on October 3rd to this shrine, and there was no ceremony. Big surprise, and I what? And the manager said, they changed the lunar calendar. They're going to do it in November. Come back then, and such. But it's a great little ceremony. You see, it combines Neo-Confucianism, Taoism, shamanism, kind of all together in different ways to do this ceremony. This is a weird one. This is the Jungsan-do cult, if you know this. One of Korea's native cults depicts Dangun as a Chinese emperor. This is full-on costume and hat of a Chinese emperor, like Tang Dynasty. A little weird that they do that, actually. But now Taebaek-san, we get to Taebaek-san itself, 7th highest peak, 7th highest summit in South Korea, and there's this ancient stone shrine right on the peak. One of my favorite places, and this is Mangyongsa, one of the maybe I think the highest temple in South Korea, the highest altitude temple at a full 1,500 meters. There's a few other contenders who claim, but I think this one is it. Okay, that's Taebaek-san, great mountain to climb. And this is the stone shrine on the peak, and on October 3rd, I think this group still does it on October 3rd, although the Other groups now do it by the lunar calendar. They do this big banner of Dangun. It's an ancient stone shrine, been rebuilt many times, but as far as we know, the foundations of it go way, way back, even 2,000 years or something. And it's on this naked peak. Notice there's no trees here. So you got a 360 view, just fantastic. 360, you can see the ocean on a clear day to the east and just nothing but mountains in every direction around. It's a fabulous view. They do this. It's called the Heavenly Peak. This is me in 1999. I brought students from Yonsei University up here to see this, and that helped me get fired from Yonsei later. Yonsei is a Christian university, and they didn't like this too much. I'm doing this, but here I'm wearing green clothing. This is the boss giving a speech, and he gave the microphone to me and let me give a speech to the crowd, and my student here translated for me and such. And here we're writing prayers on a paper and light it on fire and then release it, and the paper goes up into the heavens, lovely, and spirit writing. Yeah. All right, Taebaek-san is now national park. Used to be a provincial park, just this part, but now it's national park, and they expanded it to like double the size to include Hambaek-san over here, one of the great national parks now of Korea. This is the old Dangun Sunjung shrine that has been there for a long time. The old one, I don't know, 40 years, I think, that is old, pretty old, relatively for such things. The first one that I ever saw in the nation 35 years ago, visiting there, and the golden gilded bronze statue of Dangun that they set up. And this became a prototype of statues like this all over the nation. For a while, this group managed to put these statues in so many elementary schools all over the country, and that elementary school kids come out in the morning and bow to Dangun in the beginning, but then the Christians stopped that. They hated it, and they got rid of those. Christians used to come at midnight and saw the heads off the statue and such in attacking and such, and then they just got rid of those in most of the schools. Politics, even though it's a national holiday for him. I don't want that. This is the statue in front of the shrine. I took this photo like 30 years ago, I think. And inside the shrine, this motif that he's doing, and the 3 tablets for the Hwanin, Hwanung, and Dangun. 3 tablets for the 3 of them. This is at the new Dangun Sunjung, which is a fairly new, I think only about 25 years old, more shamanic, privately owned temple. They have this painting, which is kind of fascinating. Usually, as I've shown you before, you've seen all these things at Dangun. There's no background. There's no background behind him. He's up in heaven or something. There's this blank space behind him. It's empty. But here, they gave him a full Korean mountain background with red pine trees, just like a mountain spirit, a Sanjian. And here he's sitting there. So it's got a kind of conflation of mountain spirit and Dangun, a unique painting. Now here, we're getting to the actual new shrines that I've been finding at Taebaek-san. This is a good one, the Mirakam Sanchidan Gido Sandan. That shamanism has been legalized at Taebaek. It's illegal in most of the nation. Last year, I gave a speech in April about this, about the illegality of shamanism, but there's 4 places that I know in Korea that have legalized it, and I showed photos from the legal shrines of Gyeongsan of that. And Taebaek is one of the 4 that I know of. There could be more that I haven't found yet, that they have legalized shamanism. So these don't have to hide anymore. They don't have to pretend to be Buddhist temples, even though this still has swastikas there, but still a Sanchidan, mountain spirit altar temple here with a dragon king altar right up front. It's very shamanic. And inside this is a female mountain spirit, interestingly, with a tiger and all this. And behind her, they put Dangun. There's a lot of conflation between mountain spirit. I have many times over the past 40 years, many times I've been to a temple and seen like a Sanshin statue or painting and had the Buddhist monk point to it and say, oh, that's Dangun. And I'd say, no, sir, you're wrong. That's Sanshin, mountain spirit. No, it's Dangun. And I'd say, it's really the mountain spirit. You say, same. Or vice versa, a painting of Dangun, and he'd say, oh, this is the mountain spirit. And I'd say, no, it's not, it's Dangun. Same. As many monks and shamans do think of it that way. And there's no rules here, so nobody can say they're wrong. Manduksa is an old Buddhist temple there at Taebaek-san, one of the old great Buddhist temples that used to be pretty much entirely Buddhist. Its main feature of interest was this great painting of the Sanchin with the Buddhist monk riding the tiger coming to visit Sanchin. From the abbot of the temple had a dream, like 35 years ago, had a dream that a tiger took him riding to visit the mountain spirit. And after he woke up, he summoned the artist and had him paint this. This used to be their main kind of feature in that direction. But now at Manduksa, this painting is now in the main hall of the temple next to a dragon king icon. They've really gone more shamanic, more Taoist. They have this photo of the ceremony on Gechunjul at the peak of Taebaek-san. They have this photo. It's labeled 1980. First time I ever saw this ceremony was, I think, 1987. I think, or first time I ever got to the shrine was 87. Saw the ceremony in the early 90s, but this is 1980, very early. And they built this whole new building. There's this whole new building for Dangun, and look at these funny statues out on the side. That's funny. That's weird. Cartoonish, downright cartoonish. And they say Dangun grandfather. They call him Dangun Harabaji. And then the typical golden statue. And they also have a pillar with Dangun, and then on the side, other national founders who founded some dynasty or kingdom of Korea. People like Jumong or Taejo Isungae or Wangun, who founded some dynasty of Korea there. And inside, it looks like this. You've got Dangun with Hwanung and Hwanin, his father and grandfather, and all kinds of statues in here, big and small statues with people's names on them. They paid for membership. And the three-legged crow symbol, which actually comes from Goguryeo Kingdom and is a very important sacred symbol from very ancient Korea, which Koreans have more recently kind of readopted again. The three-legged crow as a symbol of their culture. This is Hwanin, Lord of Heaven. New style, new kind of painting. Notice he's holding this kind of book or tablet, could be a book, with that symbol, heaven, earth, and humanity on it and such. And here's Hwanung, his son, who came to earth, looking rather Dangunish, like the other motif of Dangun. And then this is their Dangun, with his hands open to benefit humanity. And he's got the symbol on his waist and a national flag down here, and behind him the Chunbugyong scripture. Such here, this whole setup display, very nice, with the three-legged crow, who's a symbol of the sun, the ultimate god, the ultimate good god, the sun, from ancient Goguryeo Kingdom, and has been revived now in South Korea as a sacred symbol. This is that temple, Manduksa, from the side, just beautiful view of lovely Taebaek-san landscape. Now, Dangunam, a whole new place that didn't exist before. And I found this last year, okay, Dangunam, it's called Dangun Hermitage. And inside, again, innovative, new, modern paintings, Hwanin, Hwanung, Dangun, nice. And Hwanin with a palace, a kind of jade palace, heavenly, a very Taoist kind of concept behind him. And he's holding the Mugunghwa flower, Korea's national flower, and he's got a yin-yang, red and green badge on his button. And Hwanung, his son, with a three-part Taebaek on his thing, and he's holding a kind of a tablet of office and such, and he's got his staff also, and a leaf in his hair crown, and Baekdu-san behind him. He descended to Baekdu-san, supposedly, and Dangun himself, their son, and next to him, the Chunbugyang. Maybe next year I'll do my RAS lecture on Chunbugyang. This is an interesting topic. It's an ancient scripture, claimed to be an ancient scripture. It might have just been invented about 1920, but They claim that Dangun wrote this. It's 81 Chinese characters that he wrote way back 4,000 years ago, and he inscribed it on the cliff of a mountain cliff at Gyeonggang-san in North Korea, where we can't go, but supposedly North Koreans maintain that cliff, some kind of shrine or something. I've never seen a photo of it though, but I've heard that elite people have gone there visiting. Whatever, the Chunmugyang, well, we'll talk about that in a future lecture. It's a whole different, new, interesting thing. And sacred scriptures such as Chunmugyang and others. This one is written in with Chinese and Korean alphabet characters. Chunmugyang is just 81 Chinese characters only. All right. They have also a mountain spirit shrine at this temple. And mountain spirit, good one. Modern. Okay. There's a ton now. Taebaek-san, Baekdam-sa Ipgu. Baekdam-sa is a famous Buddhist temple, well-known Buddhist temple, but then Ipgu, the entranceway to that temple, there is Yaksuam, a medicinal water hermitage, and they have a Dangun Sunjung like the other. Sunjung means like saint hall, a hall for a saint, meaning a main worship building. It's a high-level title. And inside, very simple, really, this kind of white motif, Dangun in a chair, and here's a woman who's there worshiping, and there's Baekdu-san on the wall. Then the Dangun Sun Daewang Sa Great King Temple, Dangun Sunjung, as it's called here. And again, a new place. A new place did not exist 10 years ago, I'm quite sure. Visited this, found this, a long walk to get in there. This is very remote. To get in there, they have Dangun Sunjung, they say, and there's shrine back here. Here's the monk of the temple. What makes people live in a very remote, faraway place like this and have their own temple and just tend the place like this, spend your life doing this? I guess I could imagine doing that. This would be pretty cool. But I don't know, it's very isolated. And people who choose to live this way out here, but they do make a living at it. In here, he's got the national flag and Baekdu-san once again with, it's very patriotic, and Dangun all in white, the white motif, not even showing hands, and a halo, are really more of almost a Western Christian sort of halo type there. They also have this, this is a copy of a more famous painting of King Danjong. Now, Danjong was just 10 years old, and his uncle booted him off the throne in the late 1400s. And then his uncle sent him into exile in Yeongwol County, not too far from Taebaek-san, like one day's horse ride away from Taebaek-san. He was in exile there, and then some officials kept trying to restore the little boy to the throne because he was righteous, and the uncle had him murdered. He sent poison to him, ordered him to take it, had him killed. And then later, this is the county magistrate, came out early one morning, and he found the ghost of King Danjong after he'd already been put in a tomb and buried, but his ghost riding a white horse to the east. And the magistrate offered to him and said, "Sir, where are you going?" And he said, "I'm going to become Sanshin at Taebaek-san. I'm going to Taebaek-san. You will find me as Sanshin, mountain spirit, there." So this is an interesting legend, and there is a shrine for Danjong, King Danjong, as mountain spirit, way up at the peak of Taebaek-san. There is a shrine for him there, and this shows with, I guess, the original Dangun, I'm thinking, behind him here with two angel attendants. All right, and they have this mountain spirit painting, very nice, with silver tigers. Silver tigers in there, and a boy bringing the peaches. And this is just me having then a meal with a monk, and I'm feeling tired. I mean, I visited like a dozen temples and shrines in one day by walking all around the slopes of Taebaek-san. And this is my last. I'm kind of tired out at this point. I'm ready to catch the train. So you get the mood. All right. Now, if I may briefly pontificate, over what does this mean. These are flourishing. I'd simply like to say there's new artworks, new stuff, and these things are expensive. You know, you got to pay an artist to paint this stuff, and you pay by the size of the painting and such. And these are new, big, luxurious paintings. It's a cost of money. So donors are given that money to support these shrines and temples, networks of donors, and they're putting into this. This is not dying. It's not going away. It's flourishing. If there's new money like this going into it, you know, 100,000, a shrine total, the building and then the paintings in it and the statues, you get $300,000, I suppose. I could never build one of these. They get that much money together. And I've seen some that are like $1 million with the wooden architecture and all that. Oh, wow. Okay, so it's not going away. It's not fading. It's flourishing. It's important. You don't see much happening. Koreans don't talk much about Dangun. If you ask them, they'll say they don't know. They won't be able to tell you the myth like I told you. They don't really know what it is. Even I've had like been interviewed on KBS TV and had the anchor, you know, saying like, well, wasn't it like a bear and a tiger came down from heaven? And then they got married and their son was Dangun. No, that's not it. Some big famous TV anchor that really happened. I think they never showed it. And on October 3rd, you'll be amazed. It's a big national holiday. Nothing's happening. I was just in the Gyeongju city, ancient capital tourism center. I was in there this morning, and I went up, just asked them what's happening for Gyeongju in Gyeongju city. It's Korea's greatest, biggest tourism city, tourism center, and devoted to ancient Korean culture. What are you doing for Gyeongju? And they all looked real confused, and they checked their computers, and they said, no, nothing. There's nothing here, no event. There's nothing in Seoul. You would think the national president should make a speech. Like every Gyeongju, he should say something. I mean, like American in 4th of July, there should be a White House statement always, and at that kind of holiday, and there at least some presidential statement, if not a speech, if not a stadium rally or something. Nope. I'd be surprised if you can find anything at all happening in Seoul. There are around the countryside, there's various, I know of about a dozen Dangun Sunjung shrines around the nation, various places, and they will probably have a ceremony if they haven't changed to lunar calendar. And I hope they haven't, but then there's not much really happening, and that's really surprising. But they keep it as a national holiday. Nobody has ever suggested they should cancel the holiday, like they've canceled certain other holidays that were useless, like Constitution Day, pointless. They canceled it. Possibly, I think maybe just because October 3rd is wonderful weather, and they love having a holiday on October 3rd. Everybody goes mountain hiking. It's just great, and they want to keep the holiday. And sometimes Chuseok lines up with Gyeongju, and then you get a whole week holiday, or even 10 days once happened. And so, I don't know, but it's important. It is the founder of the Korean ethnic group. It is their symbol of unity. If you ask Koreans, what makes you think you're one people? You know, you actually came from like 100 different tribes that slowly melded together. What makes you think Koreans are one people? They'll bring up Dangun. They say, well, don't you know the story? A bear and a tiger came down from heaven. But it is their story. It is the foundation. Now, it's against history. It's not at all what happened. A whole bunch of different people came together and slowly formed into one kingdom by 700 AD. But this idea that there was originally one Korean kingdom, one Korean king, out of all of it, there was one guy who started it, and therefore they are all people. Some Koreans, even in the late 20th century, influenced by the Christians, influenced by American Christian teachings, they started to take Dangun as an Adam and Eve story. They started to say, these are actually the first Koreans. Genetically, we are all descendants of Dangun. Everybody who calls himself a Korean comes from Dangun and his wife. All this, and then I say, oh, so you're all committing incest, are you? You're all really one clan? What? Is that good? But they started to do that. That's Christian influence. They're just adopting that Adam and Eve thing. But it is the origin of their ethnic group. And I think it will be important in the future. I think it will be. Now look, North Korea takes this really seriously. Much more, South Korea made postage. South Korea put a Gojo-san room in the National Museum, make a national holiday. They do this various stuff as if, to play this up. North Korea says it's not a myth. That is official North Korean doctrine. This is history. It happened. Not maybe the part of descent from heaven to earth and the bear and the tiger. They kind of ignore that. But they say Dangun was a real man and they have his bones. These are Dangun's bones. They found them and they exhibit them inside this. They say they rediscovered his tomb, which is conveniently just outside of Pyongyang City. And they say that was Asadal, the original, the great capital of Dangun, right outside Pyongyang. And for political purposes, this is very obvious. They built this during the starvation period, the Great Starvation between 1995 to 2005, and the whole country, Hungary, and 10% of the country starved to death. They forced all kinds of Koreans into slave labor to build this while they were hungry and didn't have enough food. That's incredible. And they spent, look at the money, what that cost, this giant stone pyramid and these gigantic, a human is about this big, gigantic stone statues and lanterns, everything. The money they spent on that while 10% of their country was starving to death. And they were refusing to buy rice from Thailand and such because it's foreign food and we don't want that. Just ridiculous, the energy they put into it. But they say he's in here, him and his wife. They found the bones. They exhibit the skeletons. No foreign scientist is allowed to examine them. And in fact, no foreigner can go inside that building at all. But some foreigners, a friend of mine from New Zealand, really did go to this and could walk around the outside of the tomb. They wouldn't let him go in. Only Koreans, whatever, but they claim these are about, he was 7 feet tall. The skeleton is huge. He was 7 feet tall. His wife was about 6.5 feet tall. They were superhumans and they display the skeletons. These are probably made out of plastic, but so the thing is, they take it seriously. And they published this book, Dangun, Founder King of Korea. I got this book in 1996. Back at the North Korean embassy in Beijing. Don't tell the KCIA about this, but I was doing Lonely Planet research. But I got this book in English there, and it's a 200-page book in English. In fact, very good English. They got some American prisoners somehow to edit this. It's quite very better English than most of the South Korean publications. And it's full of all these academic papers of North Korean anthropologists and scientists and such, all the research discovering that Dangun was real. And this is his real capital and his real tomb. And these are his real bones. They prove it. And all kinds of photos, Bronze Age relics and such going, yeah. So I think, my final point, I think now someday North Korea is going to break down. Dictatorships like that never last very long. It's lasted 75 years. It's a miracle they've made it 75 years. I never gamble that a miracle is going to continue myself when I'm at the casino or something. The dictatorships like that just fall. They always fall sooner or later. And this one is way overdue. That something is going to go down. And someday Korea is going to be ready for reunification. They're going to come together. And this is going to be really important. Dangun and this Gaechuncheol myth. That's why South Korean government is maintaining it as a national holiday, although it seems like nobody cares. It's going to be important because why should Koreans be one country? Why should it? Why can't they have two governments, two countries? The Germans used to, but the Germans finally felt they could be one Germany together. Why should they? Well, Dangun. Is the reason they were originally one people. They all come from the same clan, had the original first king, and therefore they should be one country under one government. That's why they should come together. And it's about all they have in common. North Korea, South Korea, what do they got in common anymore? Religion, Christianity, Buddhism? No. Capitalism, communism? No. Nothing. Hanbok clothing, a little bit, and kimchi. They all eat kimchi, and they all eat buckwheat noodles. Okay, that's about all they have in common anymore. They even have different language pretty much going by now. The only thing they really have in common to believe in is this. Dangun, Gechuncheol, this story, this myth. So when North Korea does break down and they start coming together, this is going to get important. I do believe going to be real important as the ideology of reunification, how we come together as one people, like we were 4,000 years ago, one people. I think it's going to be important, and that's why both sides are maintaining it at a very high level. Okay, Dutch. Check my website, friend me on Facebook, you will, or write email to me if you have any questions, anything. And I give tours, do tours. I'm doing a tour this Saturday to shamanism place. I'm doing another one in October, a public tour to shamanism at Gyeongsan. We're going to see some Dangun shrines, October 19th. So contact me if you want to go on a tour, or if you have any questions about any of this. And on my website, there's a lot more photos about Dangun and about that tomb and about shrines and stuff everywhere. So thank you very much for listening. I think we can take just 2 or 3 questions. Yes.
857. Yeah, you might have to.
Are they strict here like the other place used to be? Somerset? Oh, I'm sorry. All right, 1 question. Or 2 short ones. Yeah.
It's about the icons of Sanshin and Dangun. So usually the Sanshin has a tiger with them, and that's how I know it's not a Dangun.
Sanshin always has a tiger and a red pine tree. Tiger's the king of wild animals. Red pine tree is the king of all plants, the plant world. So, and he represents the mountain that hosts the wild animals and the plants.
Dangun has the leaves. That's how I know it's
leaf mantle or brown robe.
And I'm curious about the chair. They're always sitting on the wooden chair and not.
It's a Chinese style chair that old kings, before they developed golden thrones, that's what a Chinese king or very important Chinese person, minister or provincial governor, would sit on a chair like that. So they borrowed that from China for sure.
The golden robe is not necessarily Dangun, because it can be a king with a Chinese king or
could represent that. Like they always show, a figure in golden robe is often, and white beard is the Jade Emperor of Heaven, who's a Taoist god directly from China. Yeah, from Taoism. So yeah, you can't tell by that. Dangun is either pure white or white with the leaves on him, or the brown robe, and there's no leaves on that. I've never seen brown robe with leaves on the shoulders. Never seen that happen. I don't know why those 2 motifs developed in the early 20th century, and they've been using those 2. But now there's all these new ones that I have shown you, new ways of depicting Dangun, his father and grandfather. So that's really interesting. It's evolving, it's developing. 10 years from now, we'll have a whole nother set of photos and new artworks to talk about. It's developing.